Welcome to Fisher Flats. As Paul said, I'm Curt Riffle. I'm Vice President of Land for the Peninsula Open Space Trust, or POST as we call it. What I'd like to do is do two things with you, and it should only take about 5 minutes because I want to introduce people that are much more knowledgeable about some interesting things we want to tell you today. First is I want to tell you a little bit about POST and the role that we play in this because not a lot of people know about what we do. And then second, I want to give you the 3 reasons why we purchased Fisher Flats, which is this 30-acre parcel that you are now looking out on. In fact, it was fairly significant just being able to unlock those gates and not have to ask somebody else to do that. So first, what's POST? POST is a private, nonprofit land trust, and we basically buy and preserve parklands, open space, and farmlands throughout Silicon Valley. So we purchase land. We purchase land from willing sellers, and we do so at fair market value, and then we transfer that land to long-term owners, such as the Open Space Authority, to Mid-Penn, to county parks, who will then steward the land for the long term. So POST is in its 40th year. Over those 40 years, we have preserved and protected in one form or another 75,500 acres in the Santa Clara, San Mateo, and Santa Cruz counties. Thank you. Thanks to a lot of you who I think are donors for POST, so it's really our donors that have helped us. So POST has developed over those 40 years an expertise for confidential negotiations and discussions with landowners. So we're not a public agency, we're a private. That's why we partner with public agencies. We also are known for the ability to carry on complex transactions, and I want to bring that up because this was a complex transaction. We also are able to work very quickly. And that was another reason that was important for POST to be involved in this, is the organization that owned this, once they decided that they would entertain it being purchased, wanted to move very quickly. And POST was able to move very quickly with minimal strings attached to close the deal such that it made it attractive for the previous owner to sell this property. So with that said, I want to go into a little bit more about Fisher Flats. POST bought this property in June of this past year for $5.86 million. So this is the first, hopefully, of many purchases within Coyote Valley for POST. So stay tuned. Hopefully some more exciting news is going to be coming. Probably, if not over the next months, over the next years, because this is a long-term play. So let's talk very quickly about the 3 reasons that why POST decided that we wanted to buy this land. And there's really 3: vision, location, and timing. So first in vision, Andrea did such a great job of explaining OSAs, who will be the long-term owner of this land and probably most of Coyote Valley, that this is an important wildlife corridor. The highest and best use for this land is really as a wildlife corridor. And we have moved on. In fact, Megan talked about this and Jeremy talked about this, is that we kind of have moved on from a plan that was developed probably 30 years ago for what this land was going to be used for. And now we're really understanding of the importance of it as to be preserved as a wildlife corridor. Second, so that's the vision. We fully subscribe to that vision, and it's going to take years to accomplish that. Second is location. So you are standing right now on what was going to become, there's 30 acres, so see that fence line out there? That's half of it, and then it's another half out there. And then it goes as far as you can see, almost to the fence. There's another fence line down there. So this is 30 acres. This was going to be a 72-dock warehouse distribution center. So had POST not stepped up to buy this, this was on its way to be. Now, a lot of people are going to make it really difficult for them to make that happen, but at the end of the day, unless you own it, you can't really have a final say in how it's going to be used. So the fact, though, that not only and that kind of gets a little bit into the timing, which is my third point, but I want to come back to the location. Andrea had mentioned the landscape linkage brief that is just about to be published, and drafts have already been out on it. This is a part of, in fact, this is a northern part of the North Coyote Valley. In fact, Tulare Hill is right over there, what Andrea talked about. And it's a little bit behind the trees, but beyond those travel trailers over there is Fisher Creek. All right, and Fisher Creek flows underneath Monterey Highway, which is this road right here, and that goes into Coyote Creek. So location, 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 right? In real estate, this is, turns out, and Tanya and Higa are going to talk a little bit more about it, but this is an area that had to be preserved, because this is where basically the wildlife are figuring out they can get underneath Monterey Highway, which, by the way, for people that have been around here, this used to be called Blood Alley, right through here. Well, that's what it still is for wildlife. And however, they have figured out how to use the underpass of Fisher Creek, which is just up by the Metcalf Energy Center. So this is a key piece of that landscape linkage. It had to be preserved. And then finally is timing. And I alluded to this already, is the previous owner was on their way to having this developed. They said, basically, if you can come up with the right amount of money and the right timing, we would be interested. Not too many have the ability to be able to do that, and that's what we had to step in to do. The other reason on timing that's so important is this is the first, if this were to be developed as a warehouse site, there are other opportunities in the North Coyote Valley and even in the Mid Coyote Valley that also are thinking about developing into warehouse. And so had this become a warehouse complex, it would have almost paved the way, pardon the pun, paved the way for other development to have been closely followed in its footsteps. So we felt, our partners felt, we had to take drastic action. Okay. So what happens now that we have it, Post will continue to own this, but we will be working very closely with the Open Space Authority to manage this. In fact, I'll have to leave it up to Andrea and Matt and their team as to how they're going to manage this, but I've heard, in fact, this morning of plans already to start doing some restoration work on this, even in fact of potentially introducing some wildlife restoration in this area. So it's not going to be too much longer that you're going to start seeing some changes out here. But the idea then is eventually is not only to have Open Space Authority manage this, but have Open Space Authority take this over. So we'd be transferring this for long-term ownership. So finally, while this is one of the more expensive properties that Post has acquired, we feel that actually this purchase is probably what's going to take. It's going to be a model for Coyote Valley and for land conservation. We're going to basically have to figure out how we get businesses, how we get people, and how we get wildlife to basically coexist and thrive. And so this was a model for what's yet to come. Okay, so I'm going to finish up here and turn this over to Tanya and Higa from Pathways of Wildlife. And they're going to talk a little bit more about the really interesting work that they've developed and they are continuing to work on to study how the wildlife are using this area and passing through. So if you have questions, I think at the end of this we'll take questions, and then I plan on being with all of you through the rest of the tour. I want to thank all of you for your interest in Coyote Valley and also your interest in Fisher Flats. We're very proud of our investment. Great. Tanya?